Dr. Vivian Prescott was already exhausted when the trauma pager rang again. The sharp sound echoed down the quiet hospital hallway and sent a wave of urgency through her body. She looked at the clock on the wall and felt a small, tight knot in her chest. It was the morning of her wedding day. In just a few hours, she was supposed to be standing in a hotel ballroom in a white dress waiting to walk down the aisle to Henry Prescott. But the emergency department doors burst open and a stretcher rushed in. A young boy lay on it, barely breathing, his skin pale and clammy. His parents followed close behind their faces, full of fear and desperation. A nurse called out that the child was in septic shock and his organs were failing. Vivian did not need to be told twice. She stepped forward immediately, already preparing herself for surgery. Dr. Collins, the head surgeon, met her eyes and asked a question that felt heavier than it should have. "Vivian, can you take this case right now?" For a moment, everything around her went quiet. She thought of her mother, Ruth, sitting at home, waiting to help her get dressed. She thought of Henry, probably already getting ready at the hotel. She had promised them she would be there on time. But then she looked at the child. He was slipping away. "Yes," she said, without hesitation. Inside the operating room, time seemed to disappear. Every second was filled with intense focus. Vivian guided her team through one critical step after another. The child's heart rate dropped and alarms rang, but she refused to let him go. Sweat soaked through her scrubs and her hands began to ache, but she did not slow down. 4 long hours passed before the situation finally stabilized. The monitor settled into a steady rhythm. The child was still alive. Not safe yet, but alive. Vivian leaned back for a moment, feeling the weight of what she had just done. She had saved a life. But the relief was short-lived. Her phone was vibrating in her locker. Dozens of missed calls, all from Henry. Her wedding had started without her. Vivian pulled off her gloves and hurried to change into the simple dress she had left at the hospital. She did not have time for makeup or flowers. She tied her hair back and ran to the parking garage. As she drove toward the hotel, her heart was racing. She kept telling herself that Henry loved her. He would understand. He had to. She had no idea that by the time she arrived, her life would already be torn apart. Vivian arrived at the Grand Crest Hotel with her heart pounding in her ears. The building was glowing with soft golden lights, and guests were gathered outside, smiling and laughing as if nothing in the world was wrong. For a brief moment, she felt a rush of relief. The wedding was still happening. She had not missed everything. She stepped out of her car, holding the edges of her simple white dress. Before she could take more than 2 steps forward, a group of people moved in front of her. They were standing shoulder to shoulder, blocking the entrance. It was the Prescott family. There were aunts, uncles, cousins, and even distant relatives she barely recognized. All of them were staring at her as if she did not belong there. At the front stood Margaret Prescott, Henry's mother. Her arms were crossed tightly, and her lips were pressed into a thin, cold line. "So you finally decided to show up," Margaret said loudly. Vivian tried to stay calm. "I am sorry. I had an emergency surgery. A child was dying. I could not leave." Margaret let out a sharp laugh. "You always have some excuse. Today of all days, you should have known where you belonged." "I belonged in the operating room," Vivian said quietly. Someone's life was on the line. Henry's older sister stepped forward. "You could have let another doctor handle it. You chose work over family." Vivian felt a wave of anger, but she kept her voice steady. "That child would be dead if I had walked away." Margaret shook her head as if she was tired of hearing her. "You always act like you are better than us because you wear a white coat. But today, You humiliated my son in front of everyone." "I did not humiliate anyone," Vivian said. "I was saving a life." Margaret moved closer, her eyes burning. "You left Henry standing alone at the altar. Do you know how that made us look?" Vivian looked past them toward the hotel doors. "I need to see Henry. Let me explain to him." Margaret blocked her path. "There is nothing to explain." "You do not get to decide that," Vivian replied. For years, Vivian had tried to earn Margaret's approval. She had cooked meals for family gatherings. She had smiled through rude comments about her long hours and her lack of time for housework. She had listened while Margaret praised Henry's childhood friend Laura for being gentle and proper. She had ignored the small warning signs because she loved Henry. Now, all of it came crashing down. Henry's cousin leaned toward her and whispered loudly, "You think you are too important for this family." Vivian felt her chest tighten. "I gave everything to this family," she said. "My time, my patience, my respect." Margaret scoffed. "Respect is shown by putting family first, not by choosing strangers over your husband." Vivian took a deep breath. "Where is Henry?" Margaret smiled in a way that made Vivian's stomach drop. "He is inside, with his wife." Vivian froze. "What?" The words felt unreal. "Henry is married," Margaret repeated slowly as if speaking to a child. "He chose someone who knows how to be a proper wife." Vivian felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. She had given up so much for Henry. Late nights, missed dinners, holidays on call. And this was what it meant to him. "I need to hear it from him," Vivian said, her voice shaking. Margaret shook her head. "He does not want to see you." Behind her, the hotel doors opened and music drifted out. Laughter, applause, a microphone tapping. Her wedding was happening without her. And then a low, powerful engine sound cut through the air behind them. The sound of the engine grew louder and deeper as a long black Rolls-Royce pulled up behind the crowd. Its polished surface reflected the hotel lights and the stunned faces of everyone standing there. The car door opened slowly. A tall man stepped out wearing a dark tailored suit. His face showed exhaustion, but also a quiet authority that made people instinctively straighten. Two men followed behind him, along with a young assistant. Everyone in the city knew him. Charles Whitman. Before anyone could speak, he walked directly toward Vivian. His eyes locked onto hers as if nothing else existed around them. "Dr. Prescott," he said, "I have been looking for you." Vivian recognized him as the man she had seen pacing the hospital hallway earlier that morning while she was in surgery. "Thank you," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for saving my son. If you had not been there today, he would not be alive." He bowed his head to her. A wave of shock rippled through the Prescott family. Margaret's face turned pale. Henry's relatives stared at Vivian with wide eyes. Charles turned toward the crowd, blocking her way. "A moment ago," he said calmly, "who was telling this woman to leave?" No one answered. Margaret forced a smile that did not reach her eyes. "This is a misunderstanding. Vivian is family." Charles looked at her coldly. "Family does not humiliate someone who just saved a child's life." Vivian felt her heart pounding. Everything that had happened moments before felt suddenly exposed. Charles turned back to her. "Dr. Prescott, would you please come with me for a moment? You look like you need space." Before Vivian could reply, Margaret stepped forward. "Vivian, my dear, we should talk." Vivian did not even look at her. She walked toward the Rolls-Royce. As she passed by the Prescott family, she could feel their eyes on her. Just minutes ago, they had treated her like she was worthless. Now they were afraid. Inside the car, Vivian let out a shaky breath. Her phone buzzed. Henry. She stared at the screen for a moment before answering. Vivian. Where are you? Henry asked. My mother says you made a scene. A scene, she repeated. I arrived from surgery and your family blocked me from entering my own wedding. Henry sighed. You know how my mother is. She panicked. This thing with Laura, it was just to calm her down. Did you say the vows? Vivian asked quietly. There was a pause. Yes. Then you replaced me, Vivian said. Henry's voice dropped. I did not mean it like that. Vivian closed her eyes. You stood at an altar with another woman while I was saving a child's life. Silence. That told her everything. Charles watched her with concern. Vivian ended the call. She was no longer confused. She was done. The car moved away from the hotel slowly. Through the tinted glass, Vivian could still see the Prescott family standing in a tight group on the sidewalk. Margaret was speaking rapidly to someone, but no one looked confident anymore. Charles Whitman sat across from her in the quiet luxury of the back seat. Dr. Prescott, he said gently. I am sorry you had to go through that. Vivian nodded. I did not even get the chance to walk inside. You should not have been treated that way, Charles replied. You were saving my son while they were judging you. Her phone buzzed again. Henry. She did not answer. Charles leaned back slightly. I do not want to interfere in your personal life, but I want you to know something. When I saw how they spoke to you outside that hotel, I could not stay silent. Vivian looked at him. Thank you. They drove in silence for a few moments before Charles spoke again. Where would you like to go? To my mother, Vivian said. I need to get to her before they do. Charles nodded. I will have someone make sure no one bothers you. Vivian felt a strange mix of gratitude and sadness. A stranger had just done what her own fiancé had not. Her phone rang again. Henry, she answered. Vivian, please come back, Henry said. My mother is out of control. This whole thing went too far. Did you try to stop her? Vivian asked. I was trying to keep things calm. No, you were hiding, she said. Henry's voice cracked. I love you. Then you should have been waiting for me at the hospital, Vivian replied. She hung up. Charles watched her with quiet respect. You chose yourself, he said. Vivian nodded. I have to. The Rolls-Royce turned toward her mother's neighborhood. For the first time that day, Vivian was no longer running toward a man who would not stand for her. She was going home. When Vivian arrived at her mother Ruth's small house, she felt like she had crossed into a different world. The street was quiet. The air smelled like fresh grass instead of perfume and hotel carpets. Ruth opened the door the moment Vivian stepped out of the car. My girl, Ruth said, pulling her into a tight hug. You look exhausted. Vivian finally let herself breathe. Later that evening, Henry called again. This time she answered on speaker so Ruth could hear. Vivian, please? Henry said, his voice desperate. I never wanted things to turn out this way. My mother lost control. Ruth looked at the phone calmly. Did you stand at the altar with another woman? There was a pause. Yes. Then you have already answered every question, Ruth said. Henry turned back to Vivian. We can still fix this. Laura is gone. The ceremony was not even legal. Vivian shook her head. That does not matter. You failed the only test that mattered. What test? Henry asked. The test of whether you would stand beside me when things got hard, Vivian replied. You chose to stand with your mother instead. Henry was silent. I was saving a child's life, Vivian continued, and you were saving your comfort. She ended the call. Ruth took her hand. You did the right thing. Vivian nodded. I know. For the first time since the nightmare began, she felt something settle inside her. Peace. The Prescott family did not forgive or forget. A week after the failed wedding, Vivian was called into a formal review at the hospital. The tone of the email alone made her heart sink. A complaint had been filed against her. She sat across from a panel of administrators and doctors, including Dr. Collins. Her file was open on the table. Dr. Prescott, one of the administrators, began. The Prescott family has accused you of abandoning your professional duties for personal gain and using a patient case to gain favor with a wealthy donor. Vivian felt anger, but also fear. Her career was everything she had built. "That is not true," she said calmly. "Every minute of the surgery was recorded. My entire team was present." Dr. Collins nodded. "We are reviewing the documentation." Later that day, Charles Whitman arrived at the hospital. He gave a sworn statement describing how Vivian had saved his son and how he had personally witnessed the Prescott family blocking and humiliating her. The truth was undeniable. The hospital dismissed the complaint. But Margaret Prescott was not finished. She began spreading rumors through social circles and social media, trying to paint Vivian as a selfish doctor who abandoned her wedding for attention. Vivian saw her name dragged through lies and half-truths. Charles called her. "I will handle this. You should not have to fight this alone." "I do not want you getting dragged into this," Vivian said. "I am already in it," he replied. "You saved my son. I will stand with you." Within days, legal notices were sent. The lies stopped. Vivian's name was cleared. At work, her colleagues rallied around her. Patients thanked her. The board offered her a leadership role on a trauma research team. The Prescott family lost more than a wedding. They lost their reputation. With the storm finally fading, Vivian allowed herself to slow down. She stayed with her mother, Ruth, and began to feel what it was like to live without constant fear or pressure. They cooked simple meals together. They watched old movies. Sometimes they said nothing at all, and that was enough. Ruth noticed the change in her daughter. "You look lighter," she said one evening. "I feel lighter," Vivian replied. "I am not carrying other people's expectations anymore." Charles Whitman kept his distance, but he did not disappear. He sent short messages asking how Ruth was doing or reminding Vivian to eat when she worked too long. One afternoon, he brought groceries to the house. Ruth thanked him politely, but watched him closely. "You do not push," Ruth said. "I respect her life," Charles replied. That answer meant more to Ruth than anything else. Vivian realized she was starting to trust him not because of what he gave, but because of how he behaved. No pressure, no demands, just presence. For the first time since her engagement ended, Vivian felt safe in her own space. And that was something she had never known before. Charles and Vivian did not rush into anything. They spoke honestly about their past and the fears they carried. He told her about losing his wife years ago and how it had taught him patience. She told him about years of walking on eggshells with the Prescott family. One evening, Ruth watched them talk quietly at the dinner table and smiled. "This man listens," she said. Charles did not interrupt. He did not try to fix everything. He simply stayed. Vivian noticed how different that felt. One afternoon, Charles said something simple but powerful. "I do not want to change who you are. I only want to be someone you do not have to be afraid around." Vivian felt something shift inside her. For the first time, love did not feel like a test. It felt like rest. Henry Prescott did not recover from what happened. The wedding scandal followed him everywhere. People whispered when he walked into a room. The family name that once carried pride now carried shame. Margaret tried to explain it away, but no one believed her anymore. Henry stopped showing up to social events. The woman his mother had pushed him to marry left within weeks. Without Vivian in his life, everything began to fall apart. Vivian, on the other hand, kept moving forward. Her work on the trauma research team gained attention. She was invited to speak at medical conferences. Patients requested her by name. The same city that once watched her get humiliated now respected her. One evening, she stood with Ruth on the porch, watching the sunset. "You lost a wedding," Ruth said softly, "but you gained a life." Vivian smiled. "I finally feel like I am living my own." Charles joined them quietly. He did not speak for a moment. "I never thought gratitude would bring me into someone's life this way," he said. "But I am grateful every day that I met you." Vivian looked at him. This time she was not afraid of what she felt. She had learned something important. People who love you do not replace you. They wait. If this story taught you anything, let it be this. Never abandon your values to be accepted. Never shrink yourself to keep someone who does not stand for you. And never forget that the right people will see your worth even when others try to bury it. If you have ever been betrayed when you least expected it, share your story in the comments. And if this story gave you strength, please like and share it so someone else can find their way back to themselves too.